Every single spring, millions of suburban Americans get sucked into a ritual. That's expensive, exhausting, and completely pointless. Saturday morning, sun's already baking the pavement. And you're at the big box hardware store, pushing a heavy cart through the garden aisle. You load it up with jugs of chemical herbicides, neon bottles of weed killer, fancy, ergonomic weeding tools. And maybe you even rent one of those loud gas-powered rototillers. You swipe your card, you hand your hard-earned money over to an industry that sold you a fantasy of the perfect garden. Back home, you pull on the thick gloves, bend over in the stifling heat, and yank weeds until your hands are shot. You fire up the tiller, blades ripping through the earth, churning it until the soil looks bare, dark, and utterly beaten. You wipe the sweat off your forehead, stare at those clean beds, and for a second you feel like you've won. But deep down, you know the truth. In 2 weeks, after a few days of warm sun and one heavy afternoon thunderstorm, those weeds are coming back. And they're not just coming back, they're coming back with a vengeance. Taller, thicker, and faster than those heirloom tomatoes and tender lettuce you so carefully planted. You're stuck, trapped in an endless loop of backbreaking labor and chemical warfare, constantly paying good money just to maintain a temporary illusion of control. Now, let's get out of that suburb for a minute. Imagine driving into the quiet, rolling countryside of Amish country, or visiting a multi-generational ecological farm somewhere in rural Europe. In these places, people don't use electricity. They don't run massive diesel tractors, and they absolutely refuse to spend a single dime on chemical weed killers. But you look at their vegetable gardens, their sprawling fields, and you see something that breaks every rule of modern gardening. The soil is dark, loose, and rich, and beneath their thriving crops, the ground is shockingly, unbelievably clean. Not a weed in sight. You don't see anyone out there breaking their back in the hot sun pulling dandelions. You don't see anyone spraying toxic soup from a plastic backpack. They have achieved total agricultural mastery, creating pristine growing spaces with a fraction of the effort you're putting in. How is this possible? What ancient, forgotten knowledge do these people have that lets them casually sidestep the nightmare that plagues the modern gardener? Today, I'm going to show you a truth that will fundamentally change the way you look at the dirt under your feet. It's a secret so powerful and so heavily suppressed by the agricultural establishment that once you get it, you will never spend another dollar on weed killer. Stick with me to the very end, because I'm going to hand you a simple, almost free framework that will permanently wipe out the weed pressure in your garden. First, you need to recognize the invisible enemy. I'm not talking about the weeds. I'm talking about the $50 billion global agrochemical industry. That's how much money they make every single year selling you herbicides. $50 billion. That number is a trap, a carefully engineered system designed not to solve your problem, but to keep you subscribed to it forever. No giant corporation has any financial incentive to teach you how to get rid of weeds for free. Those formulas, inside those expensive plastic jugs, are the result of decades of intense, calculated research. They're not designed to make weeds disappear forever. They're designed to kill this generation of weeds, just long enough for you to feel satisfied, while ensuring a fresh crop emerges next month. So you have to come back and buy another bottle. And here is the more sinister part. When you spray those poisons, you are systematically destroying the microscopic life in your soil. The bacteria, the fungi, the earthworms, the whole soil food web. It all gets wiped out. And as that microbial life dies, the soil loses its ability to repair itself. It gets hard, compacted, and lifeless. And here is the cruel irony. The vegetables you want to grow are weak in this dead dirt, but weeds thrive in it. Weeds are nature's first responders. They're genetically programmed to colonize damaged, compacted, poisoned earth. You spray more chemicals, you create the perfect conditions for more weeds, and the weeds are fighting back. They're evolving. According to the Weed Science Society of America, there are now over 500 species of superweeds worldwide that are completely resistant to commercial herbicides. That number goes up every single year. You're locked in a biological arms race against nature, and you're paying for the privilege of losing. The tool companies play the same game. Every few years, they sell you a slightly redesigned hoe or a more powerful tiller, making you think the problem is your gear, not your entire philosophy. And that brings us to the biggest mistake almost every modern gardener makes. A mistake the Amish and elite ecological farmers never ever commit. Deep tilling, firing up that rototiller in spring when you violently rip up the earth to prepare your beds. You think you're doing your garden a favor. You think you're loosening things up, making a nice welcome mat for your seeds. In reality, you're doing the exact opposite. You're acting like the general waking up a sleeping enemy army. Agricultural science has proven this over and over. Beneath every piece of farmland, there is a massive, invisible fortress called the weed seed bank. In just 1 square meter of average garden soil, there can be tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of dormant weed seeds buried in the dark. These seeds are biological marvels. They have incredible patience. A weed seed can sit deep in the soil, fully alive, but totally asleep for 10, 20, even 50 years. They're waiting for one thing: light, specifically the red light spectrum in sunlight. Weeds are pioneer plants. They're designed to grow when the earth is disturbed, so their seeds have a microscopic light sensor. When the seed is buried deep, no red light gets through, it sleeps. But the second you plunge that shovel in, the second the tiller blades bite, you turn that world upside down. You drag thousands of sleeping seeds from the dark depths straight to the surface. In seconds, they're hit with blinding red light. That sensor inside the seed screams, "The ground is open. Wake up, grow." Here's the brutal truth you have to accept. Every time you aggressively till your soil, you're not removing weeds, you're planting them. You're triggering the germination of thousands of plants that would have otherwise slept peacefully for decades. The farmers who truly understand the earth know one golden rule: once the crop is in, you never disturb the topsoil. Lots of new gardeners see the surface get a little crusty after a rain, and they panic, grab a hoe, and scratch it up to let it breathe. Stop. Every time you scrape that dirt, you're just pulling the next layer of seeds up to the sun. You're manually hitting the reset button on a new generation of weeds. So, if we can't poison them, and we can't dig them out, how do we win? We have to ditch the reactive, exhausted mindset of warfare. We have to adopt the proactive, genius mindset of the ecological farmer. We're going to use nature's own physical and chemical laws to let the earth clean itself. This isn't folklore. This is a 3-part biological system, backed by modern science and used by the most successful organic farms on the planet. Let me break it down for you. Step 1. The stale seedbed. This is biological deception. The idea is simple, but brilliant. Don't wait for the weeds to grow up alongside your vegetables. So, you have to fight them both. Lure the enemy out into the open and destroy them before the real battle even starts. About 2 or 3 weeks before you plan to plant your tomatoes and peppers, go out to your prepared bed. Don't plant anything yet, just water that bare soil thoroughly. like you've already planted your most valuable crops. That water sends a false signal. You're providing moisture and perfect conditions to wake up the top layer of the weed seed bank, the ones already near the surface, ready to sprout. Over the next week, you'll see a fine green fuzz of weed seedlings appear across your bed. Perfect. That is exactly what you want. Now, spring the trap on a warm, dry afternoon. Take a very sharp wire hoe or a stirrup hoe. Glide it just barely a fraction of an inch below the surface. You're not digging, you're shaving. As that blade slides through, it slices the delicate roots of those tiny seedlings, killing them instantly. And because you barely scratched the surface, you didn't bring any new dormant seeds up from the deep. You just tricked the top layer of the seed bank into mass suicide. The data is staggering. Long-term trials out of the UK have shown that using a stale seedbed can reduce weed emergence by an average of 70% in the very first year. 70%, a massive reduction in labor, achieved not by breaking your back, but by a simple trick of timing. You cleared the battlefield before you even deployed your troops. But we don't stop there. Step 2 is where we harness one of nature's most brutal weapons, biofumigation, also known as allelopathy. Understand this, the plant kingdom is not peaceful. Plants are locked in a silent, invisible, ruthless chemical war for survival. To win, many plants evolve the ability to secrete toxic compounds into the soil, poisoning the ground to stop competing seeds from germinating near them. That is allelopathy. It is the ultimate invisible shield. We can weaponize this, and the ammo is dirt cheap. The secret lies in a specific family, the brassicas, mustard plants, and radishes. These plants are packed with compounds called glucosinolates. As long as the plant is alive and growing, these compounds are stable and harmless. But when we violently destroy the plant, a chemical miracle happens. Here's what you do. Go buy a big bag of the cheapest mustard seeds, or daikon radish seeds you can find. It'll cost you a few bucks. Weeks before your main planting season, broadcast these seeds heavily all over your garden bed. Let them grow into a thick, dense cover crop. Wait until they're about 8 to 10 inches tall, lush and green, but before they start to flower. Now, execute. Take a hoe or a shovel and chop these mustard plants down. Smash the leaves, break the stems. Immediately turn this chopped green material into the top few inches of damp soil. Water it heavily. If you want max impact, cover the area tightly with a plastic tarp. Here is the science. When that plant tissue is crushed and buried in wet earth, the glucosinolates react with an enzyme inside the plant cells. This triggers a rapid chemical explosion, releasing a highly toxic, volatile gas called isothiocyanate right into the microscopic air pockets of your soil. This gas is a natural, lethal fumigant. As that gas seeps through the soil, it is a death sentence for dormant weed seeds. It attacks their cellular membranes, destroys their structure, and wipes out the enzymes they need to germinate. The seeds don't just go back to sleep. They are chemically liquidated, they rot in the ground and die. This is not an old wives' tale. This is hard agronomy. Field trials from universities worldwide have shown that soils treated with mustard biofumigation show a staggering 60 to 75% reduction in weed emergence for the price of a bag of mustard seeds and an afternoon of chopping. You've unleashed a natural, biodegradable gas chamber that decimates the weed seed bank without leaving a drop of synthetic poison in your food. For year-round protection, you can also use passive allelopathy. Plant marigolds, buckwheat, or winter rye along the edges of your beds. Their living roots continuously excrete compounds into the soil, creating a hostile, invisible chemical fence that quietly suppresses weed seeds all season long. Finally, step 3, the ultimate lockdown, the impenetrable fortress, the thick organic mulch. If you forget everything else, remember this: nature hates bare soil. If you leave Earth naked, nature will cover it with weeds. So your final, non-negotiable step is to smother the surface. After you've done the stale seedbed, after you've fumigated with mustard, and after you've planted your seedlings, you must cover every single square inch of exposed soil around those plants with a massive, heavy layer of organic matter. I'm not talking about a decorative sprinkle of dyed wood chips. I'm talking about a dense, heavy blanket, at least 2 to 3 inches thick, made of clean straw, dried leaves, shredded wood, or rich compost. This deep mulch does 2 miraculous things. First, it is the ultimate physical barricade against the sun. It completely severs the red light from ever reaching the soil surface, those dormant seeds deep in the earth. Without that flash of red light, their internal alarms will never ring. They stay locked in the dark, in permanent suspended animation. Second, as that thick layer of mulch slowly decays over the season, it leaches organic acids down into the topsoil. This creates a suppressive microenvironment where fragile weed sprouts simply can't survive. Meanwhile, that exact same decaying matter is feeding the deep roots of your tomatoes and peppers, keeping the soil underneath cool, moist, and absolutely crawling with beneficial earthworms. The stale seedbed empties the surface cache. Mustard biofumigation chemically liquidates the buried survivors, and the thick organic mulch locks out the sun forever. When you combine these 3 proven methods, you're not just gardening anymore. You're commanding an impregnable, self-sustaining biological defense system. This requires a shift in your head. The modern world has trained you to react with stress and aggression. See a weed, fight it, pull it, poison it. That is a symptom of a tired, reactive mind. The true master doesn't fight symptoms. They step back and redesign the system. They ask deeper questions. How deep is my seed bank? What light conditions are causing this? What compounds can I deploy from other plants to build an invisible wall? How do I set this up so that 3 years from now, this garden needs almost no labor to maintain? This philosophy of delayed gratification is the rarest and most powerful skill you can develop in our frantic world. Gardening this way isn't just about a bigger harvest. It is a meditation. It teaches you to see past the surface chaos and understand the deep interconnected systems that govern life. And I promise you, once you learn to stop fighting symptoms and start designing systems in your garden, you'll start doing the exact same thing with your health, your money, and your whole life. The endless exhaustion, the sore back, the wasted money, the creeping feeling of failure, these are not the inevitable realities of growing food. They're just the symptoms of fighting against the current of nature. It is time to stop fighting. Throw those toxic plastic bottles of herbicide in the trash. The earth isn't a sterile lab waiting to be poisoned. It is a violent, beautiful, brilliantly balanced ecosystem just waiting for you to understand its rules. Now it is your turn. Go online or to the local feed store. Buy a bag of the cheapest mustard or radish seeds you can find. Try the biofumigation method on a small patch of dirt. Witness the chemical warfare of nature with your own eyes. Then, come back and tell me which of these 3 methods you're going to use first to reclaim sovereignty over your soil. The knowledge is in your hands now. The earth is waiting. I'll see you in the next transmission.